Reconvene the meeting at 8:34 p.m. I have put a foreshadowed motion up. I will amend the numbers in that motion. In table 3.1, differential rates, the GRV residential figure to change to 0.107867. The UV residential to change to 0.004631. The table 3.2, minimum rates, GRV residential to amend to 1332 and UV rural residential to be amended to 1960. That there be a 0.6 added following 0.5.
This would be, Madam President, that would make that.
Hang on.
So it'd be a new 0.6 that would word as okay, and then in the table, Madam President,
Remove the playground item. All other items in the table remain.
so just to clarify, Madam President, removing that item from the table adds it back into the budget.
Yes. So it is 244,000. No.
And then we'll delete number 6. Yeah. That comes number 8.
Yes. And item 9, as per Councillor Bias's alternate motion. Removing the playground from that line item and adding an item 10 as per the amendment I put forward earlier.
While that happens, Madam President, can I suggest for councillors and for the gallery that you outline what those changes to the rating numbers are and mean?
What these changes mean to the rating percentages is GRB residential would be 4.4, rural UV rural residential would be 12%. The changes as per they are before us would give us a budget deficit of $9,000.
Madam President, you happy with how it's written on the screen?
Yes, I'm happy with that, thank you. Can I please have a seconder for the motion before us, please? Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Our role as councillors is not just to look at the here and now, it is actually to look at the future. Our role as councillors is to look at the strategic direction of the Shire and how we fund that, how we resource the Shire to achieve that strategic direction. And at times, it is not an easy role to fulfil. And it is not easy, and we can never keep everybody happy all of the time. We have parts of our community that struggle with mortgage stress. Byford is one of the most mortgage stressed areas in the country. We have other parts of our community, through no fault of their own, have been paying substantially less than they should have for a period of time. Somewhere along the line, that has to be balanced, and Byford cannot keep paying what it is paying now and receiving very little in the way of forward movement for facilities for a very fast growing community. We have to be able to find a balance somewhere through this, and there is many, many projects that did not make it into this budget. We have a lot of projects that are waiting for next year and the year after and the year after. So the more projects we keep pushing out as councillors in fulfilling our role for the governance and the financial management of the district for our community, the further a lot of other projects will be pushed down the ladder. And we know from our community that they want to see things done. They want to see things done on the ground. As councillors, we need to be able to find a way through. We find ourselves in a situation where we only have 6 councillors here this evening, and we need an absolute majority of 5. We are working against legislative timeframes to get a budget that has to be adopted in a certain time frame to be able to send to the department. Inflation is running over 7%. And our GRV residential, as proposed by the officers, was only at 4.9. So I would say to everybody here, to all councillors, that our staff have done well in presenting and preparing a budget that they know our community needs and that is well under what inflation is and likely under the cost of what it will cost to keep the Shire running for the next 12 months. We don't always support items that we like or agree with, but we have to actually take into consideration the bigger picture, and we have to be able to put forward a budget to move our community forward. The other role as councillors that has been put before us tonight is our role in advocacy. To be able to advocate for something, we have to be able to put plans forward to show why and how and where we want the money funded to be spent. We can cut all the money we like out of having consultant reports done or plans done, and all that does is hurt our community into the future because we are not able to then advocate and gain funds when funding opportunities arise. Councillors, I think the proposed budget that we have before us is a good budget. I think our officers have done extremely well in what they have presented. I am well aware and have considered all of the submissions that we received from community members. I also consider the community members that didn't make a submission that are equally involved in our Shire and the decisions that we make. Councillor Atwell, would you like to speak or reserve?
Yes, I've said quite a bit already, Madam President. I think it's, you've got to make hard decisions sometimes. And I know this is a very hard decision for people to make. It's not a popular decision at any time, rates, but unfortunately, it's just one of the things that happens in council or in other parts of life. You've got to make decisions that are hard. Some people might not like them, but if we don't make a decision because someone else doesn't like it, then we don't make any decisions in our life or, in business or whatever. So on that note, that's about all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Councillor D'Agostino.
Thanks, Madam President. And I do agree with Madam President on the many factors we need to consider when we're formulating the budget. But I think there's also one important factor we need to be cognizant of, and that's the ratepayer. And I think if you read some of these submissions, I think it's clear some of the pulse. To quote some of them, they're saying right now the chronic economic conditions caused by COVID-19 and other global factors are putting immense financial stress on Australian households, including here in Serpentine Jarrahdale. And we know and more than 51% of households in Byford are spending more than they are able to. Another one says, we cannot continue to pay rates at the rate they are rising. Last year's rates were the first time my husband and I really started to speak about what does Serpentine offer our family. Another one was, I urge the council to consider the needs of young families. Like all people, we're under considerable financial pressures. The last 3 months have seen my inbox slammed with notices of intent to up fees and charges for basic essentials. And we can go on and on and on. If this motion is lost, I would propose an alternate motion with further reductions than those proposed by Councillor Byers. And I can demonstrate where these can be funded by a reduction in full-time employees, less consultants and the like. I did want a much lower rate increase than Councillor Byers has proposed, but I thought Councillor Byers' proposal was a good middle ground compromise, and I supported on that basis. And I believe that's the way that we should be working this forward in a compromise and moderate fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Is there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? In closing, I hear what Councillor D'Agostino has stated. I think all communities at this point are having to reassess. They're having to look at their spending. They are having to look at where their dollars go. And as we are reminded constantly, rates are not a fee for service. They are a tax that is charged to provide for the things that need doing in our community. Whether you live in an urban area, as in the newer developments in Byford, or whether you live in the semi-rural areas or in the rural areas of our Shire, we are a community and we all have input into the community facilities and community services that are provided for our community to utilise. Whether that's be through sporting groups, whether it's through using the roads in our local area, whether it's through events or programs that the Shire run. We could cut it absolutely back to the bone and have our community have absolutely nothing. And they've been telling us for years that that is not what they want, that they want us to actually look at what needs to be done and to do it. We do not have the privileges of other areas that have substantially large commercial and industrial areas where those rate bases subsidise the residential areas. We have been further impeded with the rating inequity that Council found a number of years ago in our Shire and has to find a way forward to fix, not just for part of our community, but for all of our community as a whole. We have a number of groups that have community members as part of them across the Shire, working towards developing and moving forward various parts of our community, all of them coming up with plans that need funding into the future. Councillors, I know this is not an easy decision tonight. I know that a number of you, if not all of you, have spent substantial time over the weekend doing nothing but reading budget papers. I know that you have spent countless hours at workshops and going through the information provided by officers. And one of the proudest things that I can say this year is the number of questions and the input from councillors has been far in excess of any other budget year that I have sat on council for. As a council, we need to set a budget and we need to be able to move with our community forward. Whatever we take out of this budget tonight, we don't ever get back. Whatever we take out from what the officers have put before us tonight, we don't gain that money back. We don't get to make it up somewhere else. It is gone. My belief is what we have before us might not be perfect, but it does the job that we need to do for our community across the board. With that, I'm happy to go to the vote. So all those in favour of the motion before us? All those against? Motion is lost 2-4.
State the obvious, should we record the votes, please, Madam President?
Can we record the votes, please, Minute Secretary?
I'm happy to propose an alternate motion. I possibly will need a few minutes. It will only be a minor variation on councillor Bias's, just minor variation on the numbers. So I don't know whether we. Yep. If you could bring it, I'll see if I can find it. So I think for GRV residential, councillor Bias had 0.107350. If we say that's 0.107351, so just a slight increase on it. And then...
Sorry, Councillor D'Agostino, are you right to repeat that previous line? We didn't catch that.
Oh, sorry. It will be 0.107351. So instead of 350, which councillor Bias had, be a slight increase of 351. And then for the UV rural residential, I think councillor Bias had 0.4482. Yep, sorry, and make that 0.4483. And I trust that's sufficient to make it a differential motion, so there's no issue with the same motion coming forward. And I'd expect those changes are so nominal that it wouldn't make a lot of difference dollars wise.
Are you proposing the same savings that councillor Bias was proposing before?
Yes, thank you. Madam President, could I ask a question, please? And I know we sort of discussed it indirectly, but could I ask in this context, would it be possible perhaps instead of expressing where the amount for the playground comes from? I mean, I actually support deleting the playground, but so I think it's at 244,000. Could I ask the executive if they would consider if we simply request and instruct the executive to find a cost saving of 244,000 in the budget?
Councillor, it is in council's hand tonight. It is up to council to set the rates and to set the budget.
Thank you, Madam President. Then I will propose perhaps that instead of deleting the playground, that we insert some wording, and the CEO will help me with the wording, to do as some councils do, to request that the executive find cost savings in the amount of 244,000 in the budget.
Madam President, so I understand what Councillor Agostino is trying to do. The challenge for us is that you would be adopting a budget without surety or clarity about what the individual line items would be. I don't know whether we certainly wouldn't, because then how would we fix it up and where would it come back to would be my question. Can I, so can I just suggest that the manager of governance has advised me of the clause about negated motions point in the standing orders, point 10.2.3. So that says that a motion to the same effect as any motion that's been negated by the council or committee, except those motions provided in 14.4 standing orders, should not be entertained again within a period of 3 months, except with the consent of an absolute majority of council. So potentially, if council was of a mind that there were 5 votes now for Councillor Bias's original motion, I don't know if there are or not, but if there were, could I suggest that rather than adjusting the individual numbers at the end, a motion whether council would reconsider Councillor Bias's motion would be a cleaner exercise with those items listed, and that would be in accordance with the standing orders. And if there's not 5 votes for that, then there's not going to get adopted anyway. So
Yes, that's fine. I'd be happy to withdraw my motion and put forward a motion as you've outlined.
Okay, so I'll ask the manager of governance for some help with the wording for that motion, because this is the first time we've done that, so that's okay. So are all councillors clear on that? So if there were now 5 votes for Councillor Bias's motion, I don't know if there are or not, then that clause of the standing orders would be there. So the motion that the manager of governance is writing that would require council to achieve an absolute majority for that motion and then consider the motion again, if that makes sense. So it'd be like when you revoke a motion. Madam President, the other option available to council is to adjourn the meeting for another period of time to allow councillors to have some discussion about what is a compromised position, and that's the other option available to council. It would just be that the same mover and seconder that moved the adjournment previously couldn't move the adjournment again, and we'd ask council to indicate how long they wanted to adjourn the meeting for.
I'm happy to move to adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Atwell. All those in favour?
I'm just a member of the public, but surely if you discuss this, it should be done in public.
Councillor,
In front of the public.
Councillor Coles, can you please refrain from speak?
How can you talk about the budget behind closed doors?
Councillor Coles, can you please? Councillor. Mr Coles, please refrain from counselling. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, thank you. 6. Motion is carried 6-0.
So council, the council meeting will reconvene at 9:20.